Detective Harlan parked a block away from the Brown residence, flipping through the notes he'd gathered over the past week. Each line brought him closer to a truth the file hadn't spelled out. Denise Brown had believed her husband was having an affair. That part was clear. What wasn't clear was with who. After speaking to Sarah Cole and piecing together the inconsistencies, Harlan had started to retrace Sheldon's movements. Dinners canceled, late nights at the office, recurring charges at a luxury hotel in Midtown. Then came the neighbors. One of them, a retired teacher named Mrs. Lyons, had recognized the photo of Jeremiah instantly. "Oh, that young man," she'd said, squinting at the picture. "I saw him once with Mr. Brown. They were at Cascade Springs Park, I think." "Thought it was odd? Mr. Brown don't usually have visitors like that." They looked close. That was all Harlan needed. He found Sheldon at his firm later that afternoon. The office was all glass and dark wood, the hum of quiet industry rolling behind closed doors. "Detective Harlan, Atlanta PD," he said, as he stepped into Sheldon's doorway. "Mind if I have a word?" Sheldon's expression didn't flicker, but his grip on the pen in his hand tightened. "I'm in the middle of something." "Won't take long," Harlan said, pulling out his notebook. "It's about Jeremiah Cole." Sheldon's eyes hardened. "I'm not sure who you're referring to." Harlan flipped open the notebook. "You and Mr. Cole were seen together at Cascade Springs on more than one occasion. He was also living with Ania Johnson, the girl your wife killed. You want to tell me how those dots connect?" Sheldon stood slowly, his posture measured. "Detective, I've already spoken to the authorities about my wife's case. I've cooperated fully." Harlan tilted his head. "Then you won't mind clarifying what kind of relationship you and Jeremiah Cole had." For a fraction of a second, Sheldon's composure faltered, barely, but enough for Harlan to see it. Then Sheldon's jaw set. "I'm not saying another word until I speak with my attorney." Harlan's mouth curved into a dry smile. "A lawyer asking for a lawyer. That's rich." He closed his notebook with a snap. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Brown." As Harlan walked away, Sheldon stood frozen behind his desk, pulse pounding in his ears. The glass walls of his office suddenly felt like a cage, every reflection of himself staring back like an accusation. For the first time in his career, Sheldon understood exactly what it felt like to be cornered. Cascade Springs lay quiet beneath the gray sky. The trail glistened with the thin sheen of morning drizzle, the trees unmoving in the heavy air. He heard the car before he saw it, the low hum of Sheldon's sedan easing onto the gravel. The door shut softly, the sound almost lost beneath the whisper of rain. "Sheldon," Jeremiah said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You picked the perfect day for bad news, huh?" Sheldon's jacket collar was already damp. "I didn't pick it," he said quietly. "But you're right about the bad news." Jeremiah's chest tightened. "What's going on?" Sheldon's gaze drifted. "We can't do this anymore." The words landed like stones. Jeremiah blinked, certain he'd misheard. "Can't? What do you mean, can't? After everything?" "I mean, it's over," Sheldon said, voice steady but low. "The investigation, the press, my kids. It's too much. Every direction I turn, someone's watching. It's not safe for you." "It's not safe for me." Jeremiah stepped closer. "I thought we were past all that. You told me we'd figure it out. I thought we could." Sheldon interrupted. "But I was wrong. The price is too high." Jeremiah's breath hitched. "So that's it? You just walk away?" Sheldon's eyes lingered on him, filled with something that looked like sorrow and resolve all at once. "I'll always care about you," he said softly. "But this has to end." Thunder rumbled somewhere beyond the trees. The drizzle thickened into rain. Jeremiah stood motionless as Sheldon turned, walked back toward the car, and opened the door. "Sheldon!" he said, his voice breaking. The lawyer paused, but didn't look back. Jeremiah's shout tore through the downpour. "You said you loved me! You said you loved me!" The car engine started, taillights glowing red through the curtain of rain. "Sheldon!" he screamed again, voice raw, drowning beneath the thunder and the pouring rain. "Sheldon!" The car disappeared down the winding road, leaving Jeremiah alone in the storm, the sound of the rain merging with the roar of thunder until he couldn't tell which was louder, the sky or his heart breaking. The rain hadn't stopped when Jeremiah left Cascade Springs. He drove aimlessly through the city, the wipers struggling against the downpour. His thoughts a blur of regret. He couldn't go home. Not to Sarah. Not after the way she'd looked at him that night. Shock, sorrow, something close to disgust. She said she loved him, but he'd seen the truth behind her eyes. She wanted to save him, not understand him. And God? God had been silent since the moment Denise pulled the trigger. By the time the rain slowed, Jeremiah found himself parked on a dimly lit street near the old district, the kind of place he used to know too well. Neon from a broken sign flickered across the windshield, throwing shards of color into the car. He stared at it for a long time, fighting the pool. He could almost hear Ania's voice. "You're better than this, Jay." But her voice faded just like everything else good in his life. He didn't want to think anymore, didn't want to feel. So he went where he always knew he could find what he was looking for, a place that didn't ask questions, didn't care about sin or shame. The same shadows that once swallowed him welcomed him again. By the time he lit the flame, he wasn't Jeremiah Cole, the man who tried to start over. He was just a ghost, chasing the one thing that never turned its back on him. And when the familiar haze began to blur the edges of the world, for the first time in weeks, the ache in his chest went quiet. The nights bled together. Jeremiah had lost count of how many days he'd been inside the crumbling apartment building on the south side, the same place he'd once sworn he'd never set foot in again. The floors creaked, windows broken, graffiti blooming like scars across the walls. Somewhere down the hall, a man laughed too loud, then coughed until it turned into a groan. Jeremiah sat in the corner of a half-lit room, his thoughts flickering in and out, like the dying bulb overhead. Every time he came back to himself, the guilt hit harder. Ania, Sheldon, Sarah, God. He'd let them all down. When his pockets finally turned up empty, reality crept in like a slow tide. The tremors in his hands weren't just from the cold. He needed money, anything to keep the ache at bay. By the time he reached his mother's house, the sun was dipping low behind the trees. Sarah opened the door cautiously, her eyes widening when she saw him. His clothes were wrinkled, his skin pale, a faint tremor running through his fingers. "Jeremiah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Lord have mercy. Look at you." "Mama, I just need a little money," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Just till I find another job." Sarah shook her head slowly. "No, baby. You back on it again, ain't you?" "I'm not," he lied, the words tumbling out too fast. I just need to get on my feet." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed firm. "I can't do it this time. I can't feed the thing that's killing you. Mama, please, no." Something in him broke then. Desperation surged past reason. Before he could stop himself, his hand shot out. He snatched her purse from the table.
"Jeremiah!"
she shouted. He paused on the porch, rain starting to fall again. "I'm sorry, Mama," he said hoarsely. "I'll pay you back. I promise." Then he was gone, running down the street, the purse clutched to his chest like it might save him. Inside, Sarah stood frozen, the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance. Her hands trembled as she reached for the phone. When the dispatcher answered, her voice cracked. "My son," she said softly. "He's sick again. Please, just help him before it's too late." As she hung up, tears rolled down her cheeks, falling onto the open Bible beside her. Her fingers brushed over a verse she knew by heart, one about prodigal sons and mercy, and she whispered through the ache, "Lord, don't let this be the end of him." The streetlights buzzed faintly in the humid night, the kind of dim yellow glow that made everything look slower, softer than it was. Jeremiah moved through the shadows of an alley, clutching the torn purse against his chest. The streets were almost empty, save for the hum of a passing car and the faraway bark of a dog. He hadn't meant to steal from her. He kept telling himself that. "I'll pay her back. I just need a little more time." He ducked into a side street, pulling a few crumpled bills from the purse, the guilt twisting sharp in his stomach. His mother's voice echoed in his head, steady, trembling, loving, even in anger. "You back on it again, ain't you?" Jeremiah pressed his hands to his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry, Mama." Red and blue lights spilled suddenly across the pavement. He looked up, blinded for a moment. 2 police cruisers blocked the mouth of the alley, doors open, voices calling out commands that blurred together in the rush of panic. Jeremiah froze. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might break through his chest. He raised his hands, palms open, trembling. "It's not what it looks like," he said, but his voice cracked under the weight of it all. An officer approached cautiously, one hand out, the other resting on his belt. "Jeremiah Cole?" Jeremiah nodded weakly. "You're under arrest for theft." Cold metal wrapped around his wrists, the sound of the cuffs clicking into place louder than the sirens. Jeremiah stared at the ground, the asphalt slick from rain, reflecting the lights in smeared streaks of red and blue. As they led him toward the car, he caught his reflection in the dark window. Hollow eyes, gaunt cheeks, a man he barely recognized. "You were supposed to be better than this," he thought. "You were supposed to make it." The car door shut behind him with a dull thud. Through the window, the city blurred by, the streets he'd once built houses on, the corners he'd sworn he'd left behind, and somewhere in the distance, he imagined his mother still praying, her voice the only steady thing left in the world. Inside the courtroom, Jeremiah sat at the defendant's table, in a board suit, his wrists bare, but his spirit still bound. His head hung low, the lines beneath his eyes deeper than his 20-something years should have allowed. Across the aisle, Sarah sat on the front bench, wringing a tissue between her fingers. She had been there since morning, praying quietly, whispering his name under her breath, as though she could still shield him with her voice. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The sound of the bailiff's voice, "Case number 1784, State of Georgia versus Jeremiah Cole," echoed through the room, sharp and final. Jeremiah barely looked up. His public defender spoke for him, running through the formalities, the charges, the plea. It was all words: possession, theft, repeat offense, nonviolent, but they sounded like bars locked and shut. Then the judge turned to Sarah. "Mrs. Cole, you've submitted a statement." Sarah stood slowly, clutching her Bible in both hands. "Yes, Your Honor." "Would you like to address the court?" Her voice trembled at first, then found strength. "My son is sick, sir. He's not a thief in his heart. He's an addict. An addiction will make you do things you would never do in your right mind." She paused, swallowing hard. "I know what he did was wrong. I know I was the one he stole from. But jail won't fix what's broken in him. It'll only bury him deeper." The courtroom was silent, except for the soft creak of benches as people shifted. Sarah lifted her chin, tears glinting in her eyes. "Please, Judge, Don't send him to prison. Send him somewhere that can save him, somewhere that can remind him who he is. Force him into rehab if you have to, but don't take away his chance to come back home. The judge studied her for a long moment, then looked at Jeremiah. Mr. Cole, do you have anything you'd like to say? Jeremiah rose slowly. His voice was hoarse. She's right, he said simply. I need help. I've been running for myself for too long. I don't want to die like this. The judge leaned back, his expression unreadable. Given the nature of the offense, the court will consider your mother's request. Sarah exhaled, shoulders trembling, as the judge continued. Sentencing will include mandatory rehabilitation, to be served at a residential treatment center. Probation to follow. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration. Jeremiah's knees nearly gave out in relief. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth, whispering, "Thank you, Lord." The gavel struck once, a single hollow sound that carried both punishment and mercy. For the first time in months, Jeremiah looked up and met his mother's eyes. And for the first time, she saw something in them that looked like hope. The rehab center sat on a quiet stretch of road outside the city, far enough from the noise to make silence feel like medicine. Morning light filtered through the blinds of the group room, soft and clean. Jeremiah sat across from his mother, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. They'd been in family therapy for weeks, guided by a counselor who mostly let the two of them do the talking. Today, though, the space between them felt heavier than usual. The counselor nodded gently. "Jeremiah, you said there was something you've wanted to talk about. Something from before all of this. Something I never really got to say." Sarah looked at him, her eyes searching his face. He spoke softly, his voice rough around the edges. "It's about the church, about the deacon." The room went still. Jeremiah's eyes lowered to the floor. "I told you what he did to me when I was a kid, and you didn't believe me." Sarah's hand trembled where it rested on a knee. Jeremiah's voice cracked. "I needed you. I needed somebody to tell me it wasn't my fault. And instead you called me a liar. You told me to stop talking about it." He shook his head. "You don't know what that did to me, Mama. How it twisted everything. I stopped trusting God. I stopped trusting myself. Every time I thought about praying, I saw his face." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "I know, baby," she said softly. "I know." Jeremiah looked up, searching for anger in her eyes, but there was only grief. "I believe you now," Sarah said, her voice trembling but steady. "I should have believed you then. It was hard for me to accept. I've known that man my whole life. He baptized me, prayed over your granddaddy's funeral. I just couldn't imagine him doing something so evil. So I told myself it couldn't be true." She wiped her cheeks, shaking her head. "But I was wrong. I see that now. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I used to pray God would show me he was still a good man. Now I just pray he forgives me for not protecting you when I should have." Jeremiah leaned forward, took her hand, and for a moment they just sat there in silence. Two broken people, trying to piece together what was left of love after too many years of hurt. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, something softer, quieter, began to move between them two. Spring came slow that year. The trees outside the rehab center bloomed in pale green, the air warm enough to carry the smell of rain and honeysuckle. Jeremiah stood at the window one morning and felt, for the first time in a long while, something close to hope. He'd been clean for nearly 6 months. The cravings still came and went, but they didn't own him anymore. Some nights, he even slept through till morning. Sarah came to visit every Sunday. One afternoon, she brought good news. Her eyes bright, the way they used to be when he was little. "I talked to Pastor Ellis," she said, taking his hand. "He wants to meet with you. No pressure, just talk. Maybe help you find your way back to the Lord." Jeremiah hesitated, then nodded. "All right." "And," she added with a small smile, "I called Monica. You remember her from church? She runs that construction company over on the south side. Said she's willing to give you a shot once you're out." Jeremiah's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she said, squeezing his hand, "but another's going to try anyway." That night, back in his room, Jeremiah sat on the edge of his bed and looked at the plain wooden cross his mother had left him. It was the same one she'd given him years ago, back before everything fell apart. He turned it over in his hand, the edges smooth from years of her thumb passing over it in prayer. Then, slowly, he knelt beside the bed. It had been years since he prayed, really prayed, and the words came halting, uncertain, but honest. "God, I don't even know if you still hear me," he said softly. "But if you do, I just want to say thank you. For my mama, for another chance, for letting me still be here when I should have been gone." He paused. Eyes closed. "I'm done running. From you, from myself, from what I've been through. I can't change the past, but I can live different. I'm going to keep it clean this time," he whispered. "No more lies, no more shame. No more letting anybody take pieces of me that don't belong to them. I promise you that." He lay down, the cross resting against his chest, the faint hum of the night settling around him. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Inside, Jeremiah breathed deep, steady, at peace for the first time in years. Whatever came next, he would face it with open eyes and a clean heart. And somewhere in the quiet, a prayer rose. Simple, steady, and whole.